Hi, this is George Loker, and today we're going to begin working with 3D object design, and we're going to use TinkerCad by AutoDesk, which provides an online 3D simulator that allows you to create the objects and the files that we need to be able to print here in the classroom. So if you haven't already, head over to your classroom to find the assignment. Click on the classwork tab across, scroll down and find your 3D object. Twirl it open to find the instructions and open the instructions. You'll want to review these instructions, some of which I'll have gone over during class. You want to read over the instructions as far as what exactly is your objective, and that is to create two objects, the first of which will be a simple personalized item for printing. Printing on a 3D printer does take a good bit of time. You can see right here a 2 to 3 inch object, a simple object, could take as much as 30 minutes per person. So we are looking for something along the line of your favorite token with your name on the side, a Christmas ornament maybe, with your family name and year. There are some limitations on this, so just keep that in mind that you'll need a couple of ideas here going into this. And another really good idea that people have had success with is a keychain with your name on it, either your first or your last name. So if you haven't already done so, you'll go to TinkerCad and click on Join Now. That will require you to use your own personal email account. You can get by with the district email, but remember, you can't check district email. So fortunately, it does not require you to confirm that, although indications do seem to imply that you will need to confirm your email. If you just have no email address, go ahead and use that ID number at bmtisd.com and create a good password with the system that I taught you. And at this particular point, I've already logged in. And you'll see a couple of things right off the bat that we want to talk about. You'll see a place that has a placeholder for your recent designs, and you'll see across the top a gallery. And there's quite a few resources as far as learning the TinkerCAD system. Now, on the instructions, I have a list of the some startup instructions that I will have gone over to introduce the assignment. And there are a couple of key concepts that we need to learn. Fortunately, you've learned everything that you need to know to be successful with this object project. And that is, first, that we learned about pixel graphics, and then we learned about vector graphics. Well, 3D printing, 3D object design, is nothing more than vector graphics with the third axis. It will introduce some unique navigation challenges, which we'll talk about when we get to there. All right, so one of the things that we want to learn a little bit about is this idea of empty space or empty objects. So you'll notice here on the instructions, if you have an object with gray, alternating dark gray, light gray lines going through it, that actually is not an object, that's an empty space. So we'll pay attention to that when we get to that point in the instructions here. And also on the instruction page, I have the keyboard shortcuts and navigation, which I will post in a couple places around the classroom. And you really want to commit to memory some of the basic ones. They allow you to navigate with your mouse much easier. That some of y'all, you don't really want to learn the keyboard commands, and this is definitely a program where you're going to have to use that left hand. That arrow keys alone nudge an object horizontally on the work plane as far as the X and Y axis, but Control plus arrow up and Control plus arrow down move the object vertically, and Shift plus arrow keys nudge the object 10 times horizontally X and Y axis. And then we got our Control plus Shift plus arrow keys. And this one, alternate plus drag, and the mouse movement is also very important. If you hold down the Control plus a click and drag, it will allow you to move, rotate the object plane around and let you see things from different view. So you want to keep this open in the background if you're not close to the postings on in the classroom. All right, so we're going to go ahead and open up a couple of different ones here. You'll notice that when you hover over the thumbnail, it shows you the animation of the object. That way you get a better view of what exactly it is that you're going to be clicking on. And these are ones that I've created recently. All right, so we're going to click on first this bigger project that I'm working on. This would take about 5 hours to print the last time I checked, so it would fall under the category of probably too complicated to try to print as an individual student project. However, this would be a great idea as far as you creating the second object for your design credit. Alright, so I'm holding down the control key and I'm clicking with my right mouse to move around. Now you'll start with a brand new object, so let's go back over here. So I always like to begin with the end in mind so you can see generally what you're trying to do right here. You can see this is a complex object with multiple objects, and I'll come back and explain a few things, especially why that text is floating out in the middle right there. And in this case right now I'm just holding down the right click button and allowing me to pan around. Alright, so at any given time you can click next to the colorful TinkerCad logo and that'll take you back to your home page, which I've just done, and clicked on Create New Design. So we've now got a brand new baseboard or work plane here. And right off the bat you'll see it's given us a name, Epic Fluffy Jabbin. So we're going to click on that and we're going to rename this. We're going to put our class period. In this case I'm going to use period 5 since that's my prep period, and we're going to put my last name and then what it is that you want to do. You can always rename it later. We're just going to call this practice work for right now. And later you'll add a color to it. White will generally be printed first and is preferred. That way you can color it. We do want to keep our objects one solid color. Alright, so let's go take a look at one thing we want to change right off the bat, and that is change our grid. Since most of us think in inches, we're going to click the word Edit Grid, and we're going to go from millimeters to inches, and we're going to go ahead and update that grid. Now we see our snap grid is 1/8 of an inch. Now this is a concept that we've covered in class, but to review the importance of this right here, you may want to turn it off, and we may want 1/16 of an inch or as much as 1/4 inch, and we'll see how this comes into play when we're trying to move and nudge objects around on the work plane. Alright, so I'm going to just change to default of 1/16 of an inch. Alright, so off the top here on the right hand side we see we have a toolbox that we can scroll and look through. We have objects that are already created. For your basic project, remember we're looking to create 2 projects. Initially, let's just tinker with this, and you're going to have some fun with it, but the first thing that you're going to want to create is just a simple personalized item for printing. And for this, the restrictions are pretty forgiving. You can do whatever you want. You can use objects out of the gallery as long as it's personalized. I don't want you to just put a box on the page and then hit print. Otherwise we have boxes coming off the printer and we have no idea whose box is whose. And so we do need to be customized and personalized. So the second project though that you'll do does need to be something that you've created, either a scene that you've developed and evolved with objects. And one of the things you'll find in here is that underneath the word basic shapes are a number of pre-designed objects that you can actually use. There's a robot in there, for example, and one of the things I ask is that you actually design a project, not just stick the robot on the page and call it your own, because that one will not count for credit. Alright, so we're going to go back to just some basic shapes initially, and we're going to put a box on. And remember, I already mentioned that the box with gray lines running through it is actually an empty box. So we're going to grab the red box. 3D printing is fairly simple. At this particular point, there are multiple color printers. Multiple color printers do exist that allow you to print, but you do have to have a special printer that prints multiple colors at the same time. And those are called extruders. So right now we have a single extruder. It can print one color filament at a time. And even if you design your object in multiple colors, we only get one color. It is still advantageous sometimes to create an object of a second color so that you can see the 2 objects side by side. For example, if I take a sphere and I drag it over and put a sphere on the page, and I use my left click button to move around on the work plane, and I grab that sphere and I put it on top of the box. Now you'll notice right now I can't seem to lift it up. So I'll need to use my control keys with my arrow keys, control plus the arrow key to move that up. I can also grab a hold of the axis with the black dots. The light gray boxes are going to resize it. The dark black boxes allow me to resize it in a different direction and also shift it around. Now if I click a hold of the arrow, the double arrow, that allows me to rotate the object. So as you tinker with this object, initially at first it'll be a little awkward trying to get a hold of this and move it where you want it to be. Simply grabbing it with the mouse and moving it moves it along the horizontal plane. And as you spin around the object, you'll see that there is now a gap from this angle, whereas from this angle, it did not appear to have a gap except for the shadow. So as you design your object, you will need to move the object around in different places. And we're going to put this object right on top. Now it does have the dotted lines that show you as far as the location on the y-axis. And now we see we're completely off that, if I'm trying to put that sphere on top of the box. So now I'm going to use my arrow key. So you're going to use a combination of your arrow keys and the control and the mouse. And if you've ever gotten the analogy, or I've ever told you an analogy that operating the computer is like playing the piano, this is one time you'll definitely see that. And there's my control arrow key down to get it to move down on that axis. Alright, so one of the things that we'll have to be very careful to make sure is that when you get ready to send your object to the printer, you do have to make sure that there's no gaps, because if there is a gap when it prints, you'll have overhang supports and the object will break apart. Alright, so this is a very, very basic introduction just to get you to see a little bit about what the objects are available to you. So as you design, you'll see that there's a text box over here. You can actually put your text on the front of your object, and your text letters have depth and height and width. And we'll grab a hold of that arrow. There's actually multiple arrows, whether you're on the X, Y, or Z axis. You can spin your object around. There's a 90-degree rotation. I can grab a hold of this arrow and flip that text up. And we want to lock in by holding down the shift key. We'll lock it into a 90-degree increment. If you don't hold down that shift key, it may go to 91 degrees and it'll be skewed, and it would probably be best just to delete it completely. Now right now my text is going through the box, and so or through the work plane, and it is below the level of my box right there. So I want to swap over and just show you some that I've already done, and you'll continue to want to play around with this. The learning curve is fairly easy right off the bat. So over here I've got a cell phone holder that I'm working on. I've used a couple of empty shapes to make a notch in my object, and the reason why I've done that is twofold. One, to reduce the printing time as well as the amount of the filament that is used. Now I've done some prototypes, which is something that we'll talk about at the start of this project, what a prototype is and how important they can be. And in this case I made a couple of wood prototypes, and the reason why success is floating out here is actually I just wanted it out of the way. But I'm going to move this back into position. And the idea is to have that on the surface of the object there. And this is one of the reasons why I want to do this. You see there's a gap from that angle right there, so that's not actually very solid to have a straight up and down. We would need to move it back a little bit more. I think I just shifted it to the left. Alright, so be patient with it. Don't get frustrated. And when you are done, move on to some other objects to practice, or you can delete and start from scratch. I've got one more tablet open, or one more pane. Let's go back to this one right here. Let's click on Tinker this, and it'll take us out of that other object. Hopefully it just saved. And when this one comes up, when you are done, you're going to actually click the export, and you're going to export an STL. Do make sure you put the color choice. If you don't put a color choice, I'll just print it as white. We do have some white filament left. We do also have black and blue and orange, but we actually did not get an opportunity to print beyond the white filament. And the reason why I like the white filament, as I mentioned earlier, you can use Sharpies to color it. So you will export as an XTL and go back to your classroom assignment, and you'll click on View Assignment. Click on Add in this case, since this is outside Google Classroom. You'll click on File. You'll navigate to where your files are on your computer. Select Files from your device. and you'll need to find where you put your STL. Hopefully you put it in your L drive, and when you navigate to your L drive, you'll go